Hello everyone, my name is Jared Woolard, and today I'll be showing a project proposal for a memorial of Emmett Till. This project is named Till Memorial of Reconciliation and Reflection, and let's get started. Just a little back history on Emmett Till. Emmett Till was an African American teenager that was visiting Mississippi, Money, Mississippi, from Chicago. He had family here, and some incidents occurred, and he was abducted and murdered, dumped in the Little Tallahatchie River, and his body was recovered from the river and pulled to land. Well, we first jump started this project by actually visiting that site where his body was recovered in. It was a very emotional site, untouched site, very sacred part by the river. But most importantly, we got this emotional and physical connection to the site and more knowledge on how the landscape that surrounded the site, but most importantly, the atmosphere of that site. We wanted to make it special. So after studying the aerial photo of the actual site and getting some site dimensions and the site topography, we were then able to kind of move into the more design phase of trying to figure some things out. But before we did that, we did a precedent study. And my precedent, I chose the National Memorial for Peace and Justice right in Alabama. Uh, wonderful piece of architecture. It really displays strong features in repetition and hierarchy and massing, and something so simple that could be so powerful. And I wanted to go for that in my design. So I really kind of stuck to the inspiration of using this as my precedent and my inspiration overall. There's another view of that, and you'll see throughout my design a lot of similarities in how I kind of transformed from this type of look to what I ended up with. Here are some analytical drawings, and you'll see my analytical drawings throughout this process. And let me describe a little bit what analytical drawings are. They are really a descriptive drawing of how the actual structure or a structure or something works. And I did analytical drawings of the site and the actual structure of my precedent, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And kind of just shows you like the circulation, how people move through the structure, how this building is just being held up, where natural light areas are, where natural light filters through, symmetry, asymmetry, just things like that, massing and hierarchy, just to show you how those things work. Then I moved into my actual design process, which included preliminary sketches, visual notes, and ideas. And as you can see, a lot of these things were drawn before I started actually putting things down, drafting wise or model wise, into effect. And so you can come back and look at this, or you can pause this video right now just to kind of look over some of these things. They're just little preliminary sketches to kind of get the idea, the feel of what I actually wanted to do for this design. This is the very first process model of the structure of the area. I kind of did it exactly like how the precedent study, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. If you look on the right side of this slide, you'll see an aerial photo of the site and how the road is, where the road is, which isn't really captured in this, but this was just like a more preliminary model of what I actually wanted to do. You can kind of see the shape, and then this one over here kind of shows you how it looks. You would enter the upper right and then come through into a gathering space and then go down a ramp out onto this flatter surface. But like I said, this was just a preliminary model just to kind of get a feel, like a physical look at what I wanted to do. Then my next model was what I actually intended on it being, was something a little bit more unique than my actual precedent study. So I actually then changed that square, that very square equilateral like structure, into something that was more of like a rhombus. But then with the intention of it actually being an arrow pointing to a part of the site that was very sacred, which was by the water where his body was actually found. And you can see that in the site model that actually shows you a lot better of what's going on as far as like where the road is, where buses would park, and where cars would park. And before I get any further, I'll just tell you a few things that I was concerned about before I actually designed, and things I wanted to hit on and be very strong about was the the Emmett Till Commission, they bring people on tours all the way out here, and right now it's just a bland space, something that's just super underdeveloped, and I felt like it deserved so much more, so I wanted to create a development that would be educational, but most importantly, an area for reflection. And we wanted to accommodate large groups, parking for the tour guides, parking for buses, a roundabout so those buses could make it out, because right now it's just one way in, one way out, and not many places for the buses to turn around. And then another thing was I wanted to make a huge accommodation for accessibility. I know that there's a large demographic of people that actually come and visit this site, so whether they're walking or on wheelchairs or in canes, I wanted to make sure that everyone could access this building. So I made sure that there were pathways, pedestrian walkways, ramps that were ADA accessible and compliant with ADA rules and codes, so that those things could work out fluidly. And I wanted to successfully accommodate all those things, as well as play with material that didn't require a lot of maintenance, and play with a structure that didn't require a lot of electricity or water, things that just are very scarce out there for there to be any reason to apply any of those things would kind of be absurd because of how far away it is from a lot of things. And I just wanted to accommodate those issues. I know that also I wanted to play with material that, like I said before, wouldn't need much maintenance because there's a big issue of vandalism out there. So I just wanted to play around with those things and hit those topics to make sure that everything was covered. And then I actually moved into my final part of the design. Here was how I wanted the road to come in, the bus parking, the car parking, and where the pedestrians would walk into this elevated entry space that would then enter into the building, where you get this more educational aspect of what's actually going on as far as the structure goes. And then as you exit the structure, you then go into the reflection space. And this reflection space can be used for anything. I mean, you can reflect on Emmett Till's life, which is the purpose of coming, but then again, you can reflect on all the things that you relate to the most here. And then as you exit that reflection stage, phase, and area, you then go to the roundabout to be picked up by the bus. The bus then goes around the other roundabout that halves the road and then back onto the road to then exit the site. This next view is a view from the street of the site model. As you can see, it's very noticeable that elevational change. It's about 4 feet from the reflection site, and then there's a 4-foot wall. So the reason why I did this was to take away the immediate effect of the experience in the reflection space, and I wanted to create a more anticipated one that kind of where you overlook and peer this area and you can't wait to actually go and see it physically instead of from afar. This slide right here kind of shows you what my analytical drawings of my design is, and as you look up from the top right, it just kind of shows you a circulation plan, how you would enter the building into this big large area, this gathering space which accommodates the large tour groups, and then you effectively would either exit through the courtyard or through the ramp into the reflection space. And then here's the story for the educational part. So if we look to the left of the page, the top left, the structure, you can see that there are 14 structural elements post-shade in black, and each of those symbolize 1 year of his life. And as you enter the building, you enter the beginning phases of his life. You go through the gathering space where the tour guide would kind of give you some feedback, some history on how things are working and the education of Emmett Till's life. But also as you go through and filter through the building all the way down the ramp, you exit at the last stage of his life, and then ultimately you enter the reflection phase, the reflection area to reflect on his life. The next analytical diagram is the natural light, which covers the accommodation of not having to worry about electricity because that is an issue from out there. And then I wanted to show you guys how I kind of switch it up with the symmetry and the plan of the roof, and then the asymmetrical phase of the floor plan, how those two kind of coexist in a way. Here's my floor plan. It kind of gives you a true idea of where the reflection space sits. As you enter the building, then you enter the educational phase, the 14 years of his life. You enter at life, you exit at death, and into the reflection of his death, the reflection of all the things he has accomplished. And then you would exit the site. You got a site section A, as you can see, it's right here, to the left and to the right, and then section B is the top to the bottom, and those things are I'm about to show you in further detail on this next slide. Here are those sections. On the top is section A, and on the bottom is section B. You can kind of see how the building works, how pedestrians and tours would actually interact with the building, how they would walk through the entrance and exit down the ramp, or how they would interact with the reflection space, sit or stand. But most importantly, you can see the incorporation of vegetation within the actual structure and on the site, and how it actually sits into the topograph of the actual site. Then I was able to then build a 1/4 equals a foot scale 3D physical model to kind of just show you guys how this building would actually look, and you get to use your imagination on the materials. But here's a bird's eye entrance, bird's eye view on the entrance. Then here's that actual entrance where you would enter the building. This railing would be like a black aluminum with aluminum wire going around for rails. The floor would be black stained concrete. The walls would be smooth polished concrete, and those 14 structural elements would be masked with a tempered weathered type of material of steel, and the roof would be mimicking the floor in a black aluminum reinforced type steel like structural element. As you walk down this entrance, you then go into the gathering space that accommodates those large groups, and this view kind of gives you a better look at those 14 structural elements that go down the ramp to the last year of his life, representing the last year of his life. Here's how you would enter the courtyard space, or enter that gathering space from the courtyard space, and these are the stairs. Then this is a view of the courtyard. You can see those stairs there in the gathering space, and the handrail wires, and the 14 structural elements, and even the ramp. Here's a 3D model outside view from the side where you would actually go down the ramp in the gathering space. And here's an overall view of that 3D physical model. This kind of shows you how you enter and how do you interact with the building, and then how do you exit. So, let us not forget his symbolism. Let us embrace and memorialize him, because his sacrifice deserves so much more than underdevelopment. His image stands for the experience of education, spiritualness, justice, but most importantly, reconciliation. Take a journey through Till's life to reflect on a site that embellished a movement that would shake the nation, and realize that Till is us. We must use life to continue the work his own life stood for. Here is a rendering of the section in perspective. Here's the reflection space. Kind of just shows you how people would interact with this space, and how important this space is, and how sacred this space can be. But most importantly, you can see those elements that are played into how the structure works as far as appearance-wise, and the introduction of vegetation throughout the actual structure. This is the Till Memorial for Reconciliation and Reflection. Thank you so much for watching this YouTube video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Have a great day.